Now, it's always important for a race car driver to be as versatile as humanly possible, to be able to adapt to different scenarios and situations at different speedways and different race cars. I don't think I know a guy as versatile as who I have on the line right now, my man Mike Westwood. He's been to Sunset in just about every different kind of pavement car you can imagine. But this summer, I'm most focused on the fact that we're going to see him 5 times with the Avenue Auto Parts Super Late Model Series. Mike, thank you so much for the time, my man. How has the off-season been treating you so far?
It's been busy in the shop, customer stuff coming in, going out. Just finished the Thunder car off for Jason Legg, so it's a nice piece. I hate to see it go, but, got to make the money.
I got to tell you, man, I love this recent wave of limited late models being converted to super stocks and Thunder cars. I think it's great to have these cars back on the racetrack instead of being rotting away in a field or a barn somewhere. And guys like yourself are putting forth some absolute art projects when it comes to some of these race cars.
Yeah, I've always liked the IROC style body. I mean, my super late model has basically the same style body on it, same nose cone. I just remember them, being a kid, being at Flamborough, seeing them going around the track. So I kind of really like that body style. And when Jason proposed for me to do one, I was more than welcome to.
I mean, are you having more guys come to you and approach you with possible restoration? I guess restoration is not the right word, but finding new life for outdated limited late models. Is that a new avenue you're headed down?
It seems to be the way things are going right now. I had 4 limited late models at the end of last year, and I'm down to 1, and not one of the 3 are going to be a limited late model anymore. I think 2 of them were turned into Thunder cars, and the other one I think is a Lucas Oil sportsman car now.
That's very interesting. So you had the car that AJ Ems ran for you. He ran it at Sunset for a few nights in 2015. That's the car that is now the Jason Legg Thunder car, correct?
Correct. That's the black and blue IROC body car that I just did.
So where did the other Thunder cars go? Because I always like to keep track on what crazy fellas like yourself and Jason Legg have coming and going.
Well, Jason bought 2 of my limited late models. The other one right now, we're trying to decide if we're going to change it to a Thunder or build it into one of those new Oscar hot rods. I'm kind of hoping he goes the Oscar hot rod because I have some pretty wicked ideas for bodies. That car that Peter Santanis did, that thing is a work of art.
That is one of the coolest looking cars I've seen in years. If that's what we're going to get out of the Oscar hot rod deal, then I'm all for it. I want to see more cars that look like that, that's why that tour, that series, seems like it would be right up your alley.
Oh, I'm so hoping that Jason goes for it. We already have a body picked out, and my brain's already in overdrive.
So let's talk Avenue Auto Parts Super Late Model Series. You were one of the super late model we'll call it free agents. You hadn't really committed to a full tour the last couple of years, so I guess we were thinking that you were one of the guys that was gonna take Mark Dilley up on his offer of running the Avenue Auto Parts Series. Why bring the super late model out for 5 races? Were you just thinking that maybe you hadn't given it enough attention in 2015 and had to make up for it?
Well, I couldn't really afford to run it, first off, but a 5-race series is a little more affordable to run that car. That car, I originally built it to be a modified, and it was, in better words, kind of banned from Oscar as a modified. So I said, that's fine. I'll put a super late model body on it, and it'll be a super late model. So it's probably one of the strangest cars you'd ever see with no body on it. And we ran it for 2 races the first year we built it, but I had a limited late model motor in it. So I had no HP compared to anybody else. But the car seemed to work not too bad. So last year we brought the car out and the limited late model motor blew up. I ended up picking up a big RCR motor from Shane Gowan, and we put that motor in the car and we went to Delaware. And we had a bunch of carburetor issues, and it fell flat on its face. It ran terrible. But we sorted it out. We took the car to Flamborough and practiced it, and it felt pretty good, but when there's no other cars on the track to judge it to, it's kind of hard to tell. But now that it's got a big motor in it, I'm kind of looking forward to running that Sunset with it.
Now, I did an Avenue Auto Parts breakdown with Gordy Shepard a couple of nights ago, and he mentioned that this is the kind of series where a big motor might be too much. It was one of his concerns just because of the 75 lap length of race that after 50 laps he's thinking the guys are going to be sliding all over the place with tires that are far past their expiration date. What's your opinion on that? Is maybe a smaller motor the ideal package for this series?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's the ideal package. I mean, he has a valid point. I mean, big horsepower tends to use up rubber. So, I mean, you can always detune a motor, but it's hard if you have a motor that only makes, say, 500 horsepower. It's hard to make more horsepower. But if you have a motor that makes 900 horsepower, it's easier to soften that motor down to, say, 700 horsepower. And there's an old saying, there's no replacement for displacement. So, for
a novice like myself, I don't really know what the different engine packages are pumping out in terms of horsepower. So what are you working with the package you have? What kind of horsepower are you bringing to the dance?
I'm bringing a lot of HP sauce with me.
You think like 900 or what? How much?
Oh, Sunset? we're up there. We're up there. I mean, it's an old Craftsman truck engine. So it's a RCR Richard Childress motor. So it makes good power. And like I said, I originally built the car to be a modified. So when I built the car is extremely light. Like extremely light. To make Oscar's weight with that car, I had to bolt close to 600 pounds of lead on the car.
Oh my God.
So it's an extremely light car. And with the rule package that used to be in play, I was probably one of the heaviest cars on the track. And now, the way that they've changed their engine to weight rule, I get to take almost 200 pounds of lead off the car. So
I mean, that's going to make a huge difference, right? I mean, I gotta
huge difference.
Go run around the backyard with 200 pounds tacked to your neck and tell me how quick you get tired, right?
Exactly. And those Hoosier tires, they don't like heavy cars. Plain and simple. They don't like heavy cars. You put heavy cars on those tires, and those tires last 25 laps.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lighter car on it, and those tires will last a lot longer. So, like I said, it's easier to detune a big motor than it is take a little motor and try and get some extra horsepower out of it.
Now, these races, they're going to be qualified via time trials, and they're going to be 75 laps in length. What we're used to seeing on a regular Saturday with our limited late models is a 35-lap feature with the first feature being a heads-up start from time trial. So guys go like hell to qualify on the pole because they know how difficult it is to make their way up through traffic. Now, in a super late model race where guys are anticipating the complexion of the race to change over the course of 75 laps, is it still going to be largely important to rattle off a good qualifying time, or is that more vanity than anything?
You don't really want to have to start at the back, especially when you have real fast guys in front of you, and it's in a 75-lap race. I mean, you have time to get to the front, but if you're starting at the back, there's a higher risk of getting caught up in somebody else's, accident. So, you want to start up front. But, again, 75 laps, you have a bit of time. You know there's going to be a few cautions. So you'll be able to get back up to the front. And I don't know, I know you were at Sunset the last time I time trialed, and I suck.
Well, you were raised on heat races, man. You can't take that one personally, because there's a lot of really, really, really good race car drivers at Sunset that they can't seem to time trial worth a damn either, because they've been doing heat races for the better part of 2 or 3 decades.
Yeah, but at least they didn't drive through the grass and scare the people in the beer gardens.
Well, some of those people in the beer garden need to be scared a little bit, so you kept them on their toes.
Yeah, that was a bit of a miscue on bump stops.
Now, your super late model package, you've had the chance to shake it down a little bit. I'm sure you've tried a couple of different packages, seeing what works and what doesn't. How confident are you that you'll be able to get out there with some of the big guns and make an impression in 2016?
Well, the thing is, we don't have a whole lot of time on this car. We want to get some testing in before the first race. I'm probably one of the last cars on the track that is a big spring A-arm car. I built it that way for a reason. I mean, most of the new super late models are, strut front end, coil over, bump stops. I got no bump stops. I'm on a 5.5-inch coil, big coil all the way around on the car. So it's something a little different than most of the guys are running. But I have a feeling that that setup in the long run is going to pay off. After driving a few races in a limited late model on bump stops and seeing what the tires do over a long period of time on a bump stop, I'm hoping that at the beginning of the race, the bump stop cars are going to have the advantage. But as the race goes on, I'm hoping that the big spring package will basically bring the tires longer into the race, where the bump stops tend to wear the tires out a little quicker.
And now, is that going to be the case whether or not we get a few cautions, or if you have a caution-laden event, is that going to change that theory at all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, prime example is Andrew Gressel, the year that he dominated. I mean, that guy's a stud. That thing was on rails. But if you watched him from the start to the finish, the car was getting slower and slower as the race was going on. Mm-hmm. But if a caution came out with about 10 to go and those tires cooled down, he was just a rocket ship again. Nobody could touch him. But you get a guy like J.R. Fitzpatrick, who's really got his bump stops figured out. I mean, his car stays pretty consistent from the beginning to the end, but it still drops off. So I'm hoping that the big springs will cut that down and maybe let the tires last a little longer, but we'll see. I mean, it's all theory, and sometimes my theories are a little crazy, kind of like me.
But I love your theories, man. I've known you a little while, man, and I really dig talking to you, because you're an hours over dollars kind of dude. You'd sooner, lock yourself in the shop and pore over notes and figure something out, as opposed to just bringing a pillowcase full of money somewhere and trying to go fast. So I dig that. I feel like if you were competing in the 80s, you would be right at home, because that's your style of doing things. So let me get your opinion. Is super late model racing in Ontario the last frontier where we really see ingenuity dominating the game, as opposed to everyone being on a really similar package, racing with really similar setups?
Yeah, it's one of the last classes that you can kind of innovate in. The modifieds, you can do it to a certain point, but it's the way the rule package is set up, it's hard to get outside that box. The super late model, you can get outside that box a little more and change stuff, but I mean, 90% of the cars are very similar, just different engine packages and suspension packages and shock packages. So, like I said, I don't have a pillowcase full of money to throw at a car, but I'll definitely put the time in to try and make the car work. Like I said, I have some hairball ideas sometimes, but the only way I know they're going to work is if I try them. And, I'm the first guy to try it. And if it doesn't work, I'd be the first guy to say, well, my idea didn't work. I got to do something else.
Hours over dollars, my man. Go ahead and just stamp that right on the rear decklet of the 91 this year. I'm telling you, that's your mantra. That's you take that one right to the bank. There are so many guys that are doing it well right now in super late model racing. I mean, every once in a while, Jeff Hanley will bring out some creation like that wild-ass body he had a couple of years ago, and everyone will just stand up and take notice. You know, Brian McDonald, some beautiful cars come out of his race shop. Now Mike McCall, after teaming with Kevin Cornelius, he's in the ring kind of throwing his weight around a little bit in super late model racing. You take all that into account with you doing things on your own. Who do you draw the most inspiration from when you sort of sit down and say, okay, this is what I want to do with my super late model. This is the way I want it to work. This is the way I want it to look.
Well, I mean, I grew up around Junior Hanley when I was young. When he first moved to Ontario, he lived with my uncle. So I got to see a lot of stuff that he did. And, I mean, I was always fascinated with the ideas that he came up with and the stuff that he built. And, I mean, he always ran good. Even if he didn't have a big budget, he put the time in and made the cars work. He came up with his own ideas, and he, followed through with them. Some of them, of course, didn't work, but, I mean, most of them did. So I kind of idolize him in a way. I mean, Jeff builds beautiful cars too. Don't get me wrong. Jeff builds beautiful cars. And
I mean, I feel like if I could, but I feel like there's no replacement for Jeff Hanley's craftsmanship. You know what I mean? Like he's a one-man show, so he can't crank the cars out the way some other guys. Like he can't build 20 cars in an off season. But if he builds two, those two are going to be Mona Lisas. They're going to be absolutely beautiful.
Oh, they are. They're works of art. It's almost a shame to put a body on them because the chassis look so nice. Like they're so beautiful. But my car, you might see it with a different body on it. I sunk up a new body. I don't know if I show up at Tech if they'll just kick me out with it or if they'll let it go. But I'm contemplating putting this body on and seeing what happens. But if I do, you haven't seen a super late model like it before.
I mean, I feel like when I talk to you and when I think of what you're trying to do, just one guy or two guys when you consider you and your dad a lot, coming out of a small shop with not a lot of money. I mean, you're the equivalent. You're like the Oakland A's, man. Like, you ever see Moneyball before? You're Brad Pitt Moneyball. You're trying to kind of, if you can come out with this program, this relatively low dollar program when you compare it to who you're racing with, and do well, it really could change the modern game in terms of how we look at super late model racing in this province.
That would be nice. I mean, like I said, we're going to try. We're going to get this car out. We're going to test with it a bit. Like I said, I had one good test session with it last year at Flamborough. It was kind of a quick test session because I was driving two other cars that night, and we just brought it along just to test it, and John Caselli let me do some laps in it and told me if I spin out, he goes, you're off, so don't spin out because you only get about 15 laps. So the car seemed pretty good, but it was the first time the motor worked, and we had the wrong gear in it. Wasn't turning enough RPM, but at least I got to go around at half decent speed. The car felt really stable, felt like driving a Cadillac. So I'm hoping with it all tuned up and set up that it'll be a front runner. Now,
the fact that you get to race 5 races at the same track against, for the most part, what we imagine to be the same competitors, is that going to make it easy to dial this thing in? Easy is a relative term, I know, but when you compare it to as opposed to going out on tour and running at 4 or 5 different facilities and working with 4 or 5 different setups, is it easier just to concentrate on one facility when you're trying to get a hold of what's still a new race car for you?
Definitely. I mean, if you get good setup notes the first time, it's easier to get the car back to that the second time. But when you're moving from track to track, like over the years, I haven't spent much time at Sauble Beach. I've run there a lot in a bunch of different things, but my setup notes there, to be completely honest, I blow at Sauble Beach. Plain and simple. I don't know what it is about that track. I have I don't know, Can-Am. Oh my gosh, Can-Am. I flipped the car twice in the same day at that track. I mean, that's my luck. My buddies always say I have the Sauble curse, but you know, when you're running basically a home track, it makes it a lot easier. It's easier to kind of sharpen the point on your tune on your car and your setup, because you're going back to the same place. The corners aren't changing. The asphalt basically stays the same. So it's much easier to set your car up. And from experience, when I did have run at a home track, I mean, it cost me a lot less, because I didn't have to buy different shocks, change springs, you know, like that stuff. It cuts down the cost a bit.
Now, I mean, I would like to think that you're like a super late model home body for 2016, but knowing you, there's no way that's the case. I'm sure you got a whole other folder of ventures you got working on for 2016 in terms of fabricating and driving and, you know, maybe hopping in someone else's race car. So other than the 5 events at Sunset for the Avenue Auto Parts Super Late Model Series, where else are we going to see you? And I guess maybe more importantly, what else are we going to see you in?
Well, I'm definitely going to be running a few of the Pro Challenge races. I mean, I love that car. I think everybody knows that I love that car. So I'm looking forward to getting back in it, but it won't be for a full season. It'll just be kind of off weekends and stuff. I still have one complete limited late model that we refurbished here. So I'm hoping to get it out a couple times. I might run it as a pro late a couple times, just because I have the car. We did build a Oscar modified for Jason Lag, and then Jason changed his mind. He wanted to go a different route, so I ended up buying the car back from him. It's a beautiful car. I'm sure everybody's seen it. It's the red and white modified with all the step side in it. The motor just showed up last week for it, and all I can say is big old dirty build. So I should have some HP under the hood on that car. What else do I have kicking around in the shop? Well, the Super Late, of course. John Carley's hobby car is coming back for me to straighten it out, because the crazy idea I had on the rear suspension just did not work. And it's showing up, I believe, tomorrow for me to put on the frame table and straighten it out. So I'll probably be in the hobby car a couple times this year too. More than likely at Sunset, because he's not a fan of that track. But I mean, I love Sunset Speedway. I usually run fairly well there.
You've run well at Sunset in pretty much anything. Now, I had the modify that you have, the way the rule books line up, and again, I'm a novice when it comes to reading them. I my eyes glaze over, and I get the head nod going on. So between the Oscar rule book and the OMRS rule book, does your car line up for both of them? Is there a chance you could put the skinny tires on and come run with the OMRS at Sunset, or is this strictly an Oscar touring car that you have?
Well, their rule package, they want like Camaro pickup point front clips. They want 9-inch rear ends, 5-on-5 hubs and stuff. They're trying to keep the cost down, but in a way, it's not really keeping the cost down, because a 5-on-5 hub costs twice as much as a wide 5 hub. A 9-inch rear end, the gear set for a 9-inch rear end is, say, $500 for a gear set, where you can buy a gear set for a quick change for $90. So I understand they're trying to keep the cost down, but at the same time, it hurts them a little bit. I know they didn't like the Oscar cars coming and running because they were coilover cars. They had better shock, like a shock package on them. So from what I understand, this year they've gone to what they call a non-conforming car, and you get a big weight penalty.
Oh, okay.
So guys like Gary Elliott that were running both classes with his Troyer, he would have to, say, run like 200 pounds more weight. And it comes back to like what we said earlier, tires don't like extra weight on them. Especially a treaded tire that's narrow. It's not going to like the weight. So it's going to make it hard for guys that do want to run both series this year, because they're going to be a big weight penalty compared to the other cars. So it'll be interesting to see if guys do show up, because I know there was quite a few Oscar guys that were running with those guys. So
yeah, they had a few guys that were double dipping. So if OMRS at Sunset, at least for the time being, is kind of out of the question for you, what events on the Oscar tour? Because I know you can't run the whole series, and I know that, you know, finances and time and you know, all the other factors that are against you. What races do you want to bring the modified out of the barn for?
Probably a lot of the Flamborough ones, because I don't live too far from Flamborough. So, and Flamborough was always my home track. That's where I started racing. So I would like to definitely bring the modified out for that. And as some people might know, I'm building a brand new Oscar Pro Midget for my dad to race. So the Oscar modifieds run at a lot of the races when the Pro Midgets run. So those races I'd like to have the modified at and the Pro Midget, so that I can tune on my dad's car and drive my own car. And I'm kind of hoping that works out.
That makes perfect sense, my man. Well, I know that you can't have a stable of race cars. I feel like when I go over to your house, I feel like I'm at like a Saudi sheik's house, you know, where they have their whole fleet of cars, but instead of like Lamborghinis and Maseratis, it's like different short track cars. But it's just as cool. I know that you can't own such crazy equipment without a little bit of marketing help. I know you kind of pride yourself on being one of the self-sustainable guys, but I know there are some marketing partners sort of hanging out behind the scenes. Go ahead and show a little bit of love their way. Yeah,
this year we don't have too many sponsors yet. I could really use some. It's going to be a tight year if I don't get any, but Highland Pines Campground and RV Sales came back on for this year. They've been on the car for the past 2 years, and every summer they have a car show out at the park, and I bring a car out. Last year I brought the super late model, and I drove it through the park. It's a little loud. It rattled a few windows, but it brought a lot of people out to check the car out, and that was good. And the other company that came on board is Klotz Canada, came back on board for this year. Sam Donnelly is the one heading that one up, so I'm glad to have them back on board. That will definitely help out. And like I said, I'm looking for more sponsors, so if anybody's interested, I have a whole fleet of cars.
And I know you have an awesome Twitter page where you sort of keep a photo diary of all the stuff you're working on. So for those of us that like to stay up to date on crazy stuff like that, where can we follow you on social media?
I believe it's 91 Mike Westwood is the Twitter site, or come find me on Facebook. I mean, Facebook, I post almost daily pictures of what's going on in the shop. I know I like seeing what other people are building, and I hope other people like to see what I'm building.
Shop Pick Sundays, man. That's what's up. Well, I'm excited to see you 5 times at Sunset with the super late model, and I'm looking forward to seeing if the Moneyball experiment holds a little bit of weight, and if we can shake up the super late model scene a little bit. So thank you so much for the time, my brother. We'll see you this summer at Sunset.
Not a problem. I can't wait to see everybody.
There you have it, folks. Always a pleasure to chat with Mike Westwood as he gets ready for the 2016 Avenue Auto Parts Super Late Model Series.